He's a senior spokesperson for Hamas. He's joining us on the line from Beirut. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. Can you tell us what, if anything, has been agreed by Hamas?
Well, thank you for having me. I have to say that we are still negotiating and discussing all the points with the mediators, the Qataris and the Egyptians. And it's clear that we are moving forward. There's some good points. There's some real reaction from the other side. But till now, we are still talking about the main issue, which is the complete ceasefire and complete withdrawal from Gaza. We hope to find some good and positive answers today. If that happens, we will go through this to declare a positive answer, if I may say that.
One of the key elements has also been the Benjamin Netanyahu's stated aim of sending the Israeli military into Rafa, whether or not a ceasefire is signed. Or what is your position in that? What's your understanding of that? And have there been any guarantees given about preventing that from happening?
Well, through the talks, there was some guarantees that this will not take place if there was a ceasefire. But unfortunately, there was a clear statement from Netanyahu saying that regardless to what may happen, if there was a ceasefire or not, he will continue the attack against Rafah. That means there will be no ceasefire, and that means the attack will be continued, which is against what we are discussing. At least we want to know exactly what does it mean, his statement, and the reaction from the mediators. Our understanding that any achievement for a ceasefire, it means that there will be no more attacks against Gaza, any place in Gaza, including Rafah and mainly Rafah.
If I understand what you're saying correctly, sir, the distance between what Hamas is hoping for out of these negotiations and what Benjamin Netanyahu intends for Gaza, and in particular Rafah, is very wide, and yet you seem optimistic that there can be some movement forward. Can you give us an indication of where you think there is some room for negotiation to close that gap?
Well, in fact, we are negotiating for more than 3 months, and each time we are making some forward steps, but we didn't achieve what really we want, which is a complete ceasefire and withdrawal from Gaza. But I believe we can't talk about either optimistic or pessimistic. We have to talk about the real position of the United States, because that is the main issue which will affect the position of the Israelis and mainly Netanyahu. If the United States administration have said clearly to Netanyahu, enough is enough, you have to do this and that, I assure you that will happen. So let's say the one who is supposed to answer the questions now, the Americans and no one else, if they decide that this must stop, it will happen. This is what we are talking about now, and I think the mediators, our brothers in Egypt and Qatar, they are doing a good job. They are doing their best to achieve that. This is why we are still hoping to achieve the main goal, a complete ceasefire and withdrawal from Gaza.
I want to put a scenario to you. If the US was prepared to give a guarantee that the Israeli military was not going to go into Rafah under any circumstances, would that be enough of a guarantee for you to sign this, or at least the initial stage of this ceasefire agreement?
Well, the guarantee is important. And if that was given, that will give a good push for the negotiations. But also we need clear steps to be decided and written in the paper which we will all agree on. So the guarantees are needed, but we need a clear statements which clarify the position and the commitments of each side, because as we all know, Israelis are trying every time to get out of their commitments. So the guarantees are not enough. It's important, but it's not only the needed thing. We need guarantees and we need also clear commitments.
Can I clarify with you, sir, the way, the logistics of what is playing out here? Are we talking about an aim to get a final permanent agreement on a long-term ceasefire, or are we talking about the initial stage of several stages working towards an eventual permanent ceasefire?
Well, what we are talking about is a complete arrangement. We are not talking just about the first stage. We are talking about an arrangement including the three stages and a long-term ceasefire, and that was clear in our position from day number one.
Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, said in his recent visit to Israel that the pressure was on Hamas to accept any sort of ceasefire agreement, though certainly the one that Israel had put forward, by making concessions, should you choose to do so, in the negotiations later on today. Do you feel that takes the pressure off Hamas and places it back with Israel?
Well, it's clear that, like what Mr. Blinken have said, most of the time the pressure was on Hamas. And I believe now they understand well that the one who's undermining the process all the time was Netanyahu himself. So they need to make a real pressure on the Israeli side, because he is the occupier, he is the attacker, he is the killer. He is the side who is doing the genocide in Gaza. More pressure on Netanyahu will make us close to make the needed arrangements. I believe that if Mr. Blinken spent some few more hours in Tel Aviv, he will achieve the needed arrangement rather than talking about pressure on Hamas.
One final question, sir. I want to ask you, in terms of what the timescale that you're talking about, in your assessment, how close is Hamas and Israel to reaching a deal that will eventually see the fighting stop in Gaza?
Well, I have to say, we need to hear one sentence from the mediators as a commitment from Israel. A complete ceasefire, complete withdrawal from Gaza, rebuilding Gaza. If that happened, I have to add also, with a fair prisoner exchange. If that was a commitment from Israel, I think we will achieve directly the needed arrangements.
Osama Hamdan, Senior Spokesperson for Hamas, we appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.